So good morning, everyone. So as in the previous session, we discussed what are the different, what are the prerequisites for performance testing, and in what factors, like so what are the reasons for doing performance testing for an already existing application and for a newly built application, isn't it? Now in this session, today's session, we are going to discuss what are the different types of performance testing, and in what scenario and or what is the significance of each, right? What is the importance of each type of performance testing? Okay, so you see here, like there are some few different types of performance testing in this logo, right? So load testing, endurance testing, volume testing, scalability, spike and stress, right? So apart from this, we have few more, like failover testing, right? We have failover testing which is not there here, and capacity testing. So like don't worry, like we don't do all these types of testing for all applications. Okay, so like those who are worried, like whether we have to do these many types of testing, no, we don't do all types of testing for all applications. So based on the requirement and based on the application, we do different types of testing, right? However, the important ones are like load testing and endurance testing. So I have highlighted in a different color both of these. And apart from these, some applications require stress testing and spike testing. So only these four are important and more frequently done. Types of testing. Is it clear, guys?
Yes.
Right. Now, let me present this. Yeah. So let me go into presentation mode. Yes. So the first type of testing is load testing. So load testing is, see this one. The first type of testing is load testing, the top one, right? So load testing is something which we do with, expected user load or normal user load for 1 to 2 hours, right? Say, for example, I have given some examples, like I gave some IRCTC example, right? So what is the expected user load, or normal user load for IRCTC, guys?
5 lakhs per day.
Yeah, 5 to 6 lakhs per day, right? That is the normal user load or expected user load. Say, for example, the client told you, like, that normal user load is 6 lakhs, right? So you have to do with 6 lakh users, virtual users, right? Not real users, virtual users, right? So we'll discuss how to simulate, I mean, like I already explained, we will figure out what are the critical business flows of the application, and we test with those critical business flows, right? We develop scripts for each of those critical business flows, right? We develop scripts for each of those critical business flows, and we test with those critical business flows, right? For 1 to 2 hours. If you are doing a load testing, the first type of testing that we do is load testing, right? And we do with the expected user load for 1 to 2 hours. Is it clear, guys? So that is load testing. That is called as load testing. The next type of testing is soak testing or endurance testing, right? Soak testing or endurance testing. So endurance, this is nothing but long duration test. Okay. So this is the second one, this one. We do endurance testing for long duration. So when I say long duration, right? So how do you determine the duration? Right here, we clearly discussed the load testing. We do load testing for 1 to 2 hours. Whereas for endurance testing, it depends on the business hours of the application, right? We'll discuss in detail about each of these different type of tests in the next slides. Okay. So, but now for now, understand that endurance means something which goes for long time, right? Isn't it? So, or soak, right? Soak or endurance test. These are long duration tests, and the duration depends on the number of business hours of the application. Clear, guys? This is clear.
Yes,
Move ahead.
Yes.
The next type of testing is stress testing, right? Stress, the name itself implies, right? Stress means more than normal load, right? More than something normal, which is normal, right? So here, in performance testing, stress testing means we testing any application with more than normal load on the application, right? So if you take any travel application, for example, if you take any travel application, whenever we have festivals or whenever we have vacations, right? there will be more users using the application, right? There will be more number of users than normal users. Yes or no? See, let us assume any travel application like Redbus or irctc.co.in, right? So whenever there are some festivals or whenever there is vacation, there will be more number of users using the application. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? To simulate that scenario, and now we have to test that scenario as well. When there are more than expected, more than normal user load on the application, how does it behave? How does the application behave? Right? To test that, we do this stress testing. Clear, guys? What is the importance of stress testing?
Yes, Kishore.
Right? The next one is, the next important type of testing is spike testing, right?
The load.
Spike testing. So let me give one example. So whenever, say, Tatkal booking on IRCTC is the best example for spike testing, isn't it? So normally IRCTC will have 5 to 6 lakh users. That's fine. So they have more number of servers and they support that user load. So however, when you have Tatkal booking open, right? So see, this 5 to 6 lakh users, one thing you have to understand is this 5 to 6 lakh users on IRCTC, they will not come at once. They will not access the application at once, right? They may access the application from morning, from morning to evening anytime, morning to night anytime, right? They will not be, concurrent users. I mean, they will not, these 5 to 6 lakh users will not use IRCTC at once at the same time. Yes or no?
Yes.
Right? So, however, when you are, when you have Tatkal booking open, right, there will be, there will be more number of users at the same time, isn't it? I think at 10 o'clock, some sleeper class opens, and at 11 o'clock that, AC class reservation, AC reservation opens, right? Something like that. I'm not sure, so, but what, like how does Tatkal work, right? So let's check that case, right? How does Tatkal work? Did anyone recently book a ticket, guys? Call timings, right? So 10 o'clock, like AC reservation ticket opens at 10 o'clock, and 11. Is it 11? And when does sleeper class open? 11 or what? Guys,
From 11 itself.
yeah. So for 11 o'clock, non-AC class, right? Whatever it is, but uh, during this Tatkal time, right? As soon as this Tatkal window opens at 10 a.m., there will be thousands and lakhs of users who will be trying to access the application. Yes or no? Because the tickets will be sold out in 5 or 10 minutes, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right? So at that time, like there will be a sudden surge in the user load. There will be a spike in the user load. Yes or no? So that's why this type of testing is called as spike testing. So how do we do spike testing? We simulate sudden surge in the user load, right? So what do we normally do is when you are doing load testing, we test with normal user load for 1 to 2 hours. When I say 1 to 2 hours, what we do is, okay, let me take some example. Let me show you how we do this load testing, stress testing, and all. Did you go through Excel tutorials, guys? How many of you went through those Excel tutorials?
I have both.
Guys, how many of you went through those tutorials?
I had gone to one session.
Okay. I'll do one thing, I'll keep for every 5 minutes. Okay. Go for it. So when we are doing a load testing, right, what we do is we suppose your target user load is some, let's take some simple numbers for discussion sake, let's take some 5,000 user load. You have to test an application with 5,000 user load. Okay, so we will not ramp up all the users at once. Okay, so generally what we do is we will ramp up, like 100 users, right? And then again 200 users, like that. Okay, so 100, 200. Let me do like this. Yeah, so let's, okay, let me take 5,000 user load. Okay, right? So when you are doing a load testing with 5,000 users, right, this is how we do. Okay, this is how we know. So we will not gradually, we will not, ramp up all the 5,000 users. We will not start all the 5,000 users. So, but what we do is we gradually ramp up the users. We gradually increase the user load on the application, in some half an hour or 45 minutes. And, we will continue that 5,000 users, for 1 hour approximately. Approximately for 1 hour, we will continue that user load, right? And then we gradually decrease the user load on the application, right? So let me draw a graph for this. You just give those values and, use function F11. Excel will draw the graph for you, right? So you just give the values and, use function F11, right? It will, Excel will automatically plot the graph for you. And now we can change the graph, this chart type. So I will select it as a line graph. Yeah, right. So this is how we do load test case. So if you are, so we are doing approximately for 2 hours here. So what we do here, we will gradually increase the user load. Let me change this, values a bit. Let me make this, some 0. And then I will give this, 500. Let's assume that, we have, so this is, let's assume that this is our user load. Okay, this is how we want to ramp up the user load, right? Yeah, so this is how we do a load test case. Okay, so what we do, if our target user load, see on the x-axis you have time, elapsed time. Elapsed time means, you understand, right? What is elapsed time? Right? And on the y-axis you have user load, right? This is clear, right? And if, let's assume that if your target user load is 5,000, means if an application is being used by 5,000 users, every user will not start at once, right? For any application. See, suppose, you are using, like, you are using Facebook. So some people may use Facebook, in the morning time. Some people may use open Facebook in the afternoon or evening time. But everyone will not use at once, isn't it? Yes, yes or no?
Yes.
Right? So we will simulate the real world condition. So what we do is we are gradually increasing the users to 5,000, and we are continuing that user load for 1 hour, and then we are ramping up, we are decreasing the user load. So this is called as ramp up, steady state, ramp down, right? This is called as, let me highlight this. See, this is called as, ramp up from here to here, and this is Steady state. See, this is steady state. Steady state means there is no change in the user load. And this is called as ramp down. This part is this, is called as ramp down. Okay. Everyone able to follow, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Right. Now, where are we? Yeah. Hold on. So let me clear this annotation. Right? But however, when you have, when you have some Tatkal booking kind of situation, right? So users will not slowly ramp up, yes or no? Users will not slowly ramp up, right? So, as soon as Tatkal opens, someone who want to book Tatkal ticket, right? They will be 5 to 10 minutes, 5 minutes before. They will be ready to, open the browser and do the booking, yes or no? How many of you did Tatkal booking, guys?
Yes, sir.
Most of you might have booked it, right? So you'll be ready for at least 5 minutes before. You'll be sitting in front of your system and you will be ready, isn't it? Right. So, in that case, what happens? There will be, as soon as they know the clock strikes 10 o'clock, so everyone will log into the application, everyone will try to book a ticket, right? So there is a spike in the user load, yes or no? There is a spike means what is the general meaning of spike? What is the general meaning of spike?
Increasing.
Sudden
Higher.
surge, sudden increase, yes or no?
Yeah.
Right. So, so for such kind of applications only, when, for Tatkal book, for IRCTC, Tatkal booking for IRCTC, or whenever there is a flash sale on e-commerce application, or whenever there is a big billion sale on Flipkart or Amazon, only for that type of applications, we do this spike testing. Is it clear now why spike testing is important? And for what kind of application spike testing is important?
Yes,
Very important interview question, guys. This will be one of the top 5 interview questions, the first 5 interview questions. So what are the different types of testing that you have done? Okay, this will be one of the top, first 5 important 5 interview questions. If you can answer such questions well, right, you will get, half of your interview is done. You are selected 50%, you are selected. If you answer, this question properly, such questions properly. The first 5 or 10 questions, if you answer properly, your selection will be, decided by 50%. You got it?
Yes.
yes, sir.
Right? The next type of test, you understood, right? Why, for what type of applications require, not every application requires spike testing. Every application doesn't require spike testing. Okay. So based on the requirement, we do that. Based on the type of the application, we do that. Clear, guys? The next type
Any
of,
application which doesn't require spike testing, can you give an example?
what is that?
Any application which doesn't require a spike testing, can you give an example?
Okay. So suppose there is an application used by a call center. Okay. Suppose there is an application used by a call center, customer care executives, right? There will not be any sudden spike in the user load over there, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Got it.
Such kind of application doesn't require spike testing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And volume testing, the next type of testing
How
is
we can
volume.
determine this application requires a spike testing and this application doesn't require a spike testing based on the business flows?
Based on, so, the business analyst team, basically, there will be a team called business analyst team. They will be, they will be explaining you, what type of application it is and what is the target user load, right? And, how the users will be starting using the application. And if there will be any, sudden surge in the user load, right? Or, will the application be used by more number of users at any point of time, right? All these, the development team or business analyst team will be having a, fair idea on that.
Okay.
So, or else if the client doesn't know, or if, they cannot, they cannot suggest you, performance test, it's as a performance test engineer, like it is our responsibility to decide like, what type of test we have to do for any application based on our experience, right? All right. So, don't worry, like, most of you, like, those who are having like 3 years, 2 years experience, you will be working as, team members, you will be having team leader, project lead, right? So, but, these are important for interview perspective. So you have to know and you have to understand. So what are the different types of testing and, how to decide like which application requires, which type of testing, right? However, like, your team lead or project lead or, project manager, architect, they will be discussing with the client and they will be determining like what type of testing is required for each application. All right. The next type of testing is volume testing, right? The next type of testing is volume testing. Volume testing is nothing but load test with expected load and huge volume of data in the database. Load test with expected load and huge volume of data in the database, right? This is volume testing. We'll discuss this in detail in the next sessions. And scalable testing, the next type of testing is scalability testing. So what that means, testing an application to verify how much it can scale. This is testing an application for future load, right? Say for example, this Facebook has some right now Facebook has some 20 million users across the globe, right? Let's assume that Facebook has 20 million users across the globe. Now in the coming up 1 or 2 years, let's assume that there will be 25 million users, right? 5 million users will be increasing, right? So in that case, they have to test whether their application supports that feature load or not, right? So if they want to do that, they have to do this scalability testing. So scalability testing is nothing but testing an application to verify how much it can scale, or how much more load it can support in future. Is it clear, guys, what is scalability testing?
Yes.
Everyone, do we have Dasra Ram today? Ram, you are able to follow? Dasra Ram, are you
Yes,
able to
sir.
follow? Kirti,
Sir.
Lakshmi Priya, and Manohar, Sadia, Shreya,
Yes, sir.
Vaishnavi,
Yes, sir.
able to follow, Vaishnavi?
Yes, sir.
We'll have an assessment, guys. Okay. Immediately after this, we'll have an assessment. I will show you some graphs and you have to tell me what type of test is that. Okay. Please pay more attention. I will discuss, I will explain one more time in detail. What is load test? What is the endurance test? What is stress test? Right. So immediately, like, today itself, we'll have an assessment. Right. So, I'll show you some graphs and then I'll ask each one of you. All right. Ready for that?
Okay, sir.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is scalability testing, right? And now there are few other performance testing types. There are failure testing, capacity testing. There may be few more. I haven't listed that, but these are the frequently done and important types of performance testing. There are few more called as failure testing and capacity testing. Okay, we'll discuss failure testing also with some example. Failure testing and capacity testing also with some example. So let me give one good example for failure testing. All right. Let me give one real life example for failure testing. Okay. So suppose like you have you have power cuts in your area, right? At your home you have power cuts and you don't want you want uninterrupted power supply, right? Then you will go for you will buy an inverter. Yes or no? You'll go for a backup thing, right? You'll have you'll plan for a power backup and you'll buy some inverter and you install that inverter, right? So once you install the inverter, right? So what do you do generally? So to test whether the inverter is working fine or not, what do you do generally, guys? Will you wait for the power cut? Do you wait for a power cut and you check then? Then what do you do? If you want to see, electrician came and he has installed the inverter at your home, right? What do you do generally? once the inverter is installed.
We will switch to the inverter mode instead of the direct power one.
Right. So you will turn off the mains power, right? How do you switch to the inverter? You turn off the mains power, right? The main current. Yes or
Yes,
no?
yes, yes,
Or the electrician, he will turn off the mains power, and immediately it will switch to the backup, power backup, isn't it?
yeah,
And he'll show you that all the all the electrical points are working fine. Whatever connected to the backup, they are working fine or not. Yes or no?
yes,
Failover testing is something similar to that only, right? Every application will have a backup location, right? Every application, every web application will have some a secondary application. Okay, so that if the main application goes down for some reason, right, your users should not know that. They should be able to access that. They should be able to continue using the application. So for that, what they will do is, for every application, there will be a backup application. Means the same application will be running on different environment, in some other different environment in a different city, right? The main purpose for this is, suppose, we have in India, we have most of the companies headquarters in Mumbai. Yes or no? Mumbai is called commercial capital of India. Yes or no? Most of the companies headquarters are in Mumbai. So recently, Mumbai was affected by floods, right? Heavy floods, right? Yes, yes, sir. No,
Yes,
you
sir.
know that
Yes.
recently Mumbai was very badly affected by floods, right?
Yes.
Yes. And whenever there is some, like there are some interruptions, right? So whenever there are floods, there will be no power supply, and or else, in US there will be, some cities have frequent earthquakes, hurricanes, and so on. Yes or no? So what if your main application is down, right? Assume that, SBI has its headquarters in Mumbai. SBI has its headquarters, corporate office headquarters, and their applications also will be hosted in Mumbai. So their headquarters in Mumbai, right? Now, if there are some floods or earthquakes in one city, in that particular city, and there are some power cuts. There are some interruptions for 4 to 5 days, right? Like, if your application is down for 4 to 5 days, right? Users will not be able to carry on their transactions. Yes or no?
Yes.
Right? Then they will switch for some other application, some other bank. If it is a bank, right? They will not, they face inconvenience, and they will switch to some other bank, right? They may switch to some other bank. They may start using some other bank. Yes or no? Some other bank net banking application. Right? So to do this, to get the continuity of business, right? This is called as COB, continuity of business, right? So what they do is, they will set up their application servers in some other location. They will set up their application running in some other location, so that if the main location is down for some reason, right? If the main servers, or if the main environment is down for some reason, users can continue using the application using the backup. I mean, the load should be direct, the user load should be directed towards that backup location, right? So now, testing this, main application and backup application, this is called as failover testing. Just like how you do, how you test your inverter when you buy and when you install an inverter. Just like how you switch down your mains power, and you see whether your backup is working fine or not, your inverter is working fine or not, right? So in the same way, any application will have a backup location, right? A secondary location. And whenever the main environment is down, right, all your user load should go to your backup environment, right? This is called as failover testing. Is it clear, guys?
yeah. This is for the sake of the business continuity plan. We can phrase
Yes.
it like
Yeah,
this, right?
that is also called as BCP, business continuity plan. Correct. Or continuity of business, right? So let me, BCP, right? What is BCP? Business continuity planning. Clear, guys? What is the business continuity planning here? For every application, they will be having a backup, secondary environment in some other city, so that if some city is affected by some floods or earthquakes or any other natural calamities, the others environment will be serving the users. Is it clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes, Kishan.
Right? So testing this, that main environment and backup environment, whether they are able to, once the main environment down, the backup environment is serving the users or not. Again, once the main environment is up and running, all the user load should come to main environment, right? So this is called as testing. This is called as failover testing. Fail over, right? So whenever the main application fails, it should be the user load should go over to the backup environment, right? That's why that is called as failover testing. Is it clear, guys?
Yes.
Yes, Kishan.
Yes.
We can take Amazon data centers too now.
Yes. So yes, Amazon has recently they started opening one data center in Hyderabad also.
Hyderabad.
Have in Mumbai also, right?
Yes, sir.
Another best example we can take is in US. Like we have many cities will be affected by these hurricanes or earthquakes. In Japan we have Japan is one country which will be badly affected by earthquakes, right? So if there is an earthquake in the main environment city, the city where we have main environment, there the backup environment or the secondary environment will be serving the users, right?
Yes, sir.
So the next type of testing is capacity testing. So capacity testing is something similar to scalability testing only. We'll discuss in the in detail later. So capacity testing is something which we like. Say for example, if you take the Facebook example, right? Suppose Facebook has 20 million users now, right? There are projections that in future there will be there will be some 30 million users or so, right? So if you want to, Facebook has to test whether the existing servers can support that additional 10 million users or not, right? Then they do this capacity testing, right? There is a slight difference between scalability testing and capacity testing. We will discuss that later. Okay. So these are the different types of performance testing, guys. And I have explained in detail over here in the next slides. So load testing, we generally, when we are doing a load test, we simulate current user load on the system, current user load or normal user load on the system, right? And load testing will be done for normally for 1 to 2 hours, right? And it ensures that the application is stable and can handle expected peak load, right? Load testing ensures that the application is stable and can handle expected peak load, right? And it is a mandatory test that will be done prior to any other performance testing type, right? The first and foremost important type of testing is load testing. So before doing any other type of testing, we have to do load testing first. Before doing soak test or stress test or spike test, first we have to do load test, right? This is a mandatory test that will be done prior to any other performance test type, right? And the next type of testing is soak or endurance test. It is conducted for longer durations based on business hours of the application, right? Business hours can be 4 hours or 8 hours or 16 hours, 1 day or 3 days. Some applications will have maybe having 4 hours, right? So say for example, if you take, okay, everyone know what is meant by business hours, right? Say for example, the bank, if you take a bank, right? So maybe a bank opens at 10 o'clock and they will work till some 4 or 5 o'clock, right? Yes or no? Let's assume that it works till 5 o'clock. Cash counter may be closed, but they will be working in the back end, right? Yes or no?
Yes, Kishan.
Right? So business hours of that banking is net banking application is from 10 to 5. If you take that 10 to 5, 7 hours is the business hours of the application. So if you are testing a banking application, you have to test for say 8 hours. Say for example 7 to 8 hours, right? And suppose if you are testing some travel application like Redbus or Make My Trip or something, so users may start using from morning 6 o'clock till night 10 o'clock. Yes or no? Most of the users will be using from morning 6 o'clock to evening night 10 o'clock. Then what are the business hours of that application? So 10 to 6, that is around 9 hours, right? 9 hours is the business hours of that application. Here, guys.
Yes.
So sorry, no, morning 6 to 6 hours and plus, 10, 16 hours, sorry. Right, 16 hours is the business hours of travel application. Any travel application or any e-commerce application like Flipkart or Amazon, right? Most of the users will start using from morning 6 o'clock to night 10 p.m. Right? So 6 to 12, 6 hours and then 10 hours. 16 hours is the business hours of that e-commerce application, isn't it?
So this test is applicable to the Amazon and Flipkart kind applications.
Yeah, so endurance test, basically endurance test, no. See, load test and endurance test we have to do for any application. That's what I have mentioned in the previous slide, right? So I have highlighted in a different color, right? So if you observe here, load test and endurance test, right? These are important. We have to do for any type of application.
Okay.
How many hours testing we have to do? That depends on the business hours of the application. That is what we are discussing.
Because these kind of applications, we can't determine the business hours, right? For like Amazon or Flipkart.
No, see, there may be some users, but most of the users will be using from morning 6 to 10, right?
Okay, okay. Yeah.
Most of the user load will be from morning 6 to 10, right?
But in the other region, for example, now if you take the morning 6 to 10, it should be at the IST timings. But for the other region, their users also will use the same application.
Right. So in
So how
that's
we
why,
can determine this is the limited business hours for this application? This is not the limit for this business hours for this application.
yeah. So Amazon is, Amazon.in. We use Amazon.in, right? So at least in India, like, we will have a limited business hours, right? For Amazon.in. Suppose there is Facebook application. Facebook application, we don't have any limited business hours. That's why, for such kind of applications, we do for 1 day or 3 days continuously. So basically, what is the objective of doing endurance testing is to see how the application is behaving when it is subjected to load for longer duration. Continuously, if you are using any application for longer duration, right? So, how the application is responding, right? Are there any issues that, that are coming up when it is subjected to load for continuously? Clear?
What is the maximum time we can do this endurance testing? Maximum
That
duration?
depends on the type of application. So we cannot say there is no such, hard stop, like, there is no hard and fast rule that, we have to do for only 1 day or we have to do for only 3 days. That depends on the type of the application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next up, right? So the main objective of doing to identify performance, the main objective of doing this endurance test is to identify performance bottlenecks like memory leaks or connection leak. We'll discuss what is meant by memory leak and connection leaks later in one of the later sessions. Okay. So for now, remember that, the main, so each test has a definite purpose. So what is the purpose of load test? To ensure that application is stable and can handle expected user load, right? That is the purpose of doing a load test, right? So load test is to ensure that the application is stable and it can handle expected user load. And the main objective of doing, endurance testing is to identify memory leaks or connection leaks, right? I will explain in detail what is meant by memory leak, what is a connection leak. I will explain in detail later on. Okay, for now, remember that, for now, understand what are the different types of performance testing. Okay, and how do you differentiate each different type of performance testing? Okay, for now, please, understand that. That is enough, good enough. The next type of testing is stress test, right? So stress test is done by gradual increase of user load until the application breaks, right? So stress means more than something normal, right? Yes or no? You're feeling stress means you are having some workload which is more than normal, right? So here stress test means it is done by gradual increase of user load until the application breaks. Breaks means until the application crashes. We'll do this, we'll increase the user load and see. So what do we know here by doing stress test? By increasing the user load on an application till the application breaks, right? What can we derive, or what can we conclude? it helps us to determine what is the maximum load that it can support, that applications can support, right? That is called as application breaking point, right? Main purpose of stress testing is to identify an application's breaking point, means what is the maximum load that it can support before it breaks down, before the application crashes, right? That is the purpose of doing stress test, right? And response times and error count increases once breaking point is attained. The application need not break, but response times may increase and there may be more number of errors when once the application achieves its breaking point. Is it clear, guys? Stress test means,
Yes.
what we are doing here, we are increasing the load gradually until, we see response times becoming high or application starts throwing errors, right? Then we understand that, the application has reached its breaking point. Clear? Clear, guys?
Yes, Kishore.
Right? And this is stress test, right? The next type of testing is spike test. Spike test is done by sudden increase in user load beyond expected user load for shorter duration. How do we do spike test? We increase the load, we do a sudden increase in user load for shorter duration, and we bring that spike down, right? So we do that beyond expected user load. Suppose your application user load is 5,000. Well, let's assume that some applications will have some 1,000 users, spike. Suddenly there will be some 1,000 users increasing, right? What we do is we'll increase the load suddenly and we bring it down, right? From 5,000 we increase to 6,000 and bring the load down, right? So that is how we do spike testing, right? Spike testing can be considered as a subset of stress testing, right? We'll discuss that in detail, right? So, but generally you understood, right? Well, how do we do spike testing? We suddenly increase the user load, right, beyond the expected user load. And we will bring that spike down. We will bring that sudden increase in user load down in short time, right? So that is how we do a spike testing. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Right? And volume testing. What is volume testing? Volume testing is done to verify response times when there is huge volume of data in the database, right? Let us understand this volume testing, in what cases volume testing is required, right? And why is this volume testing required? Say, for example, you are using a net banking application and you are doing some transfers, you are doing some fund transfers, right? All these fund transfer details should be stored in the database, right? Whenever, even though you transfer some 10 rupees or 20 rupees also, that transaction will be stored in database, yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
And so like when thousands and lakhs of users are doing lot of transactions, right, the number of records in the database will increase, right, over time. Guys, yes or no? As you are doing, as more and more users are doing more and more transactions, there will be huge volume of data in the database. Agree or not?
Yes, sir.
Agree.
Right? There will be, number of transactions will be, like increasing gradually, right? Not only net banking applications. Suppose if any travel application, when users are booking tickets, making payments and booking tickets, right? The number of, records in the database will increase, right? Any database, right? Any applications database, gradually the, number of records will be increasing, right? Now, when there are less number of records in the database, it may, suppose you go to net banking application and open, like any application, right? So it will show some transactions, right? By default, it will show some 5 or 10 transactions, isn't it? It will show the recent transactions, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? So that means, like when there are less number of records, right? If you take any net banking application like accessbank.com. So for example, Axis Bank shows you when you log into your account, right? It will show you the last, last 10 transactions. Yes or no? Yes or no, guys?
Yes, sir.
Just give me a second. See, so see here. So any net banking application, basically it will show you the last 10 transactions or last 5 transactions, isn't it? Right? Every transaction it has to show, right? Even though if it is 10 rupees or 2-3 rupees, right? It will, when you are doing more and more transactions, right? Obviously, it will, the number of records in the database will increase, right? Yes or no, guys?
Yes.
So when there is, when there are less number of records in the database, right? It can fetch these details faster, right? But when there are more number of records, right? Your application, this page may become slow. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Right. So so you understood, right? When there are less number of records, your database may be faster, may respond fast. But when there are more number of records in the database, right? It may become slow gradually, right? So volume testing is something, volume testing is done to verify response times when there is huge volume of data in the database, and it is also referred as flood testing, right? This volume testing is also referred as flood testing, right? Volume testing is to analyze the system performance by increasing the volume of data in the database, right? So generally net banking applications, what they do is, in the database, they will maintain some 2 partitions called history partition and active partition and history partition, right? We'll discuss that later. I don't want to give too many inputs here, right? So I'll explain, when I came to know this when I was working for Bank of America, right? That any database will have some 2 partitions called, active partition and history partition, right? So in the active partition, they will maintain some 1 lakh records, right? Anything more than 1 lakh records, they will be moving to history partition. Otherwise, your database volume will increase. Number of, it will increase to 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs as the time goes on, right? The number of records in the database also will increase, right? Then your database will become slow. If suppose some user want to generate a statement, say for example, I want to generate a statement for last 3 months, right? So then, it has to, if the number of records are more, right, it has to fetch, right? It has to search in more number of data, between more number of data. Yes or no? Suppose I want to fetch a statement for last 3 months, right? For the last 3 months, right? So it has to fetch those details from the database. Yes or no? These transactions should be fetched from the database, right?
Yes.
Then what happens? If there are more number of records, it will be difficult, right? I mean, it will take more time for the database to give you the recent your statement, your transaction details, right? So volume testing is done with the done with certain volume of data in the database, some number of records in the database, right? So suppose there is a new application, there are very less number of records in the beginning, right? But as and when users are using the application, right, your database size will increase, right? So to test that, like how your application behaves when there is large volume of data in the database, we do this volume testing, right? Is it clear, test? Can I move on to the next one? You want to
Yes.
complete this test? The next one is scalability testing. Scalability testing is performed to identify if an application is capable to scale up in terms of user load, right? So I just gave one example, right? Like Facebook, right? Facebook has 20 million users now, and let's assume that there are projections. Its business analyst team projected that in the next 2-3 years it will have 30 million users, right? Now they have to be prepared, that Facebook team, they have to prepare their servers, or they have to test if the same servers can support that additional 10 million users or not. If not, they have to add the server capacity, they have to increase the server capacity, isn't it? And how do they determine, like, how much server capacity they require is they do this scalability testing, They do this scalability testing and they will find out like, whether CPU is sufficient, whether they need to update the processors or they need to update the RAM and all, right? That is scalability testing, or they need to increase the database configurations and all, right? That is scalability testing, or that is also called capacity testing. There is a slight difference between those two. I'll explain that later, right? Failure testing also I explained. Failure testing is used to verify system's ability to continue day-to-day operations while the processing part is transferred to a backup location, right, or backup environment, right? That is failure testing, right? It can determine if a system is able to allocate additional resources when needed, or even if it is able to recognize when the need has arisen, right? Leave this, but you understood the basic concept of failure testing, right? That is the best example that I can give, like that, power backup example, right, for failure testing, right? So these are the different types of, important types of performance testing, right? Any queries before we move to the Q&A? I'd like to extend this session for 5 minutes. Guys, please, sorry for the, inconvenience, 8:30 to 9:30 batch, guys. Can you please wait for 5 minutes, right, before I close this session? Right. So let's have some Q&A. Any queries, guys, before we move to the Q&A session? I mean, before we go to the assessment. Any queries on these different types of testing?
No.
You understood what are the different types of performance testing?
Yes.
Right. Shall we move to the assessment? I'll show you some graphs. Right. The reason why I'm doing this is very few interviewers, some product-based companies are, if the interviewer is very good in and doing, and if you, like if you want to select the best of interview candidates, right? They'll ask you to draw graphs like this. They may ask you, can you? First they will ask you what are the different types of testing that you have done. Right? The next thing they may ask you is, can you draw a graph for each of them? Okay. So now tell me, what type of graph is this? Right? Observe here on the x-axis, we always have time. Most of the times we have time on x-axis and user load on the y-axis. Now, can you tell me what type of graph is this? And what type of test is this? Or what does this graph represent?
It's like spike testing.
Yes, spike testing. So if you assume this is your normal user load, some people are already disconnected. Okay. So maybe, yeah, I think Lakshmi has some office. Lakshmi. Yes.
No, I'm there, sir.
You are there, okay. Okay, that's fine. So who disconnected then? Okay, that's fine. Right. So, see, assume that this is your, see, what is this called, guys? Let me, what is this called? What is this part called as?
Ramp up. Ramp up.
Right? And if you assume this is your expected user load, there are some sudden surges, right? There is sudden increase in the user load, right? So these are called as spikes, right?
Yes.
So this graph represents a spike test, right?
Spike test.
These are the spikes, right? We are maintaining that spike for shorter some duration for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and we are bringing that down, right?
Yeah.
So this graph represents a spike test, right? And observe here, on x-axis we are representing time, and on y-axis we are representing user load, right? Now, let's move on to the next graph that I have, right? Yes. What type of test is this?
Load test.
Load test. How can I say that it's load test?
Because after a ramp up, it is doing the steady
state and
Steady
ramp
state.
down.
And down.
And ramp up. Yes. So we have a ramp up here, and steady state, and then ramp up, right? Right. So we have a ramp up period here, right? And then we have steady state from here to here, and then we have a ramp down. And if you observe here, time is mentioned as 1 hour. If you see here, right? So approximately 1 hour. Right? The tilde symbol, that is called as tilde, TILDE. The tilde symbol denotes that approximately. That is a symbol for approximate, right? Approximately 1 hour. So we are doing a test for approximately 1 hour. That's why, we can, this graph represents a load test, isn't it? Right? Next. The next type of let me take you to the next graph base, right? What type of test is this?
It's stress testing.
Right.
It's more than the normal load on application.
That's gradually increasing the
We are
stress test.
gradually increasing the user load, and we are gradually. So basically, if you see the graph, we are gradually increasing the user load, right? Ramp up, steady state, again increasing user load. Represents virtual users, right? So we are again increasing the user load, maintaining some steady state period. There is some background noise. I'm muting everyone. If you want to answer whenever you want to speak, right? Just you can use press and hold the space bar whenever you want to speak, right? Whenever you want to answer, guys, you can temporarily unmute your line by pressing and holding the space bar on your keyboard. Okay. So here what we are doing, guys, we are gradually increasing the user load. Yes or no? So this is ramp up. This is, steady state. We are maintaining steady state. Again, we are gradually increasing the user load. Again, some steady state. Again, we are gradually increasing the user load. So this, we are doing a stress test here to find out, at what load the application breaks, isn't it? Yes, this graph represents a stress test, right? And now, so the next graph that I have, yes. Now, what type of test is this one?
Soak endurance testing, soaker endurance.
Soaker endurance, because the
Right.
time considered.
So if you observe here, the time is mentioned as 5 hours, right? So
Yes.
if you observe approximately 5 hours, right? So this graph indicates a
Soaker endurance.
Soaker endurance testing.
soak test or endurance test. Perfect. Right. Next one. Okay, somehow I am unable to go to the next graph. Right arrow. Yeah. So what type of test is this one?
Volume testing.
Right. So if you observe here, on x-axis we have time, but on y-axis we have data quantity, isn't it?
Yeah.
On y-axis we have data quantity, means data volume, right? So means how is the application behaving when the data increasing, the number of records in the database is increasing. That's what it is. Data quantity is increasing, means, right? So this graph represents a volume test, right?
Volume test.
Represents volume testing. Clear, guys? Now, now I have shown you the graph, and I asked you what type of test is this. In interview, they may ask you to, get a pen and paper, or get a pen and paper, and they will ask you they may ask you. Few interviewers will ask you, not all interviewers, but few interviewers may ask you to draw a graph and show them. Right? They may ask you draw a graph for load test, or they may ask you draw a graph for stress test, or for spike test. You should be ready to draw and show them.
Sure.
Right? So if you understand the concepts, yes, you will be able to draw the graph. Right? Okay, guys, I'll stop it here. So is everyone able to follow, guys? I want from freshers also. Vaishnavi, Shreya, these are 2020-2021 pass outs. Shreya, are you able to follow, Shreya?
Yes, sir.
If I ask some questions tomorrow, can you answer?
Yes, sir.
Right? So go through the recording session one more time, right? And we'll have one assessment in the first 5 to 10 minutes tomorrow. I'll be asking questions on today's concepts, different types of performance testing, right? So we will follow this, from tomorrow we'll follow this. Don't join late, okay? So even though you join late, I'll ask more questions those who joined late. Okay? If you don't join, I can't do anything. I can't help you, of course, right? If you don't join tomorrow's session, but from tomorrow onwards, we'll be having this, daily assessment for 5 to 10 minutes, because we started the core concepts of performance testing, right? So I want to have daily assessment so that so that like you will understand like how much you are able to follow, and whether like if you can always refer to the recorded session, right? If you don't understand some concept, or if you are unable to answer some question, any question, right? You can always refer to your recorded session, isn't it? All right, guys, I'll stop it here. So, it's time for, for the next batch. I'll stop it here. Any queries before we close your session? All right, we'll discuss. If you have any queries, we'll discuss tomorrow. Like it's already, we are 10 minutes late by 10 minutes. I'll stop the recording. Thanks for watching, and, have a nice day. And for recording purpose, those who haven't subscribed, please, like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos and more updates, right?